here with Father Michael Schmitz. You're a chaplain at the University of Minnesota Duluth,
Yep.
Director of Youth Ministry in the Diocese of Duluth.
Yep.
And so you're here at the conference giving a talk, and you gave a talk on friendship. Tell us about that, what you said there.
Yeah, so we were talking, I kind of teamed up with a woman named Sarah Swafford. She talked about the need we have for friendships, and then I was talking about friendship as it pertains to discipleship, and because when it comes to focus, one of the focus has this notion that comes from some guy, I don't know if you've read about him, his name's Jesus, that friendships become one of the most powerful means of discipleship. Because a lot of times I think we look at discipleship, we think like, well, I took a class, I read a book on discipleship, I took a class about Jesus, or read a book about Jesus, where Jesus discipled his disciples, by living with them and having this friendship with them. And so we were looking at the different kinds of friendships we have in our day and age, and how sometimes the kinds of friendships we default to aren't necessarily the kind of friendships that really lead someone to Jesus.
So you speak about virtuous friendships.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, so like the friendships we default to are kind of the incidental friendships. Like they're not bad, they're good. They're like friendships of convenience. Like we happen to live, on the same block, or we are in the same class, we are part of the same sport. But if that changes, like if it's a new season and so I'm not in the same sport anymore, like, well, that was good, but now I'm onto the other guys. Or they're friendships of pleasant friendships. And so the only reason we're friends is because we really enjoy each other's presence, or they're friendships of utility, usefulness, that as often as we're kind of mutually beneficial to each other, we're great buddies, it's great. And those are all good, but they're incidental, they're not intentional. Because a virtuous friendship is something higher than that. Because I would say that friendships of use, or friendships of pleasant friendships, they're what we settle for, but they're not what we strive for. A virtuous friendship is when I recognize someone, another person, that is, I recognize the goodness of their character and realize that, wait a second, they're pursuing what I'm pursuing. The other person recognizes something in my character and says, wait, he's pursuing what I'm pursuing. And so what happens is we're both living for something bigger than ourselves, and I recognize in you that you're living for that big thing too. And like, you recognize this kind of spark, so that the friendship then is raised up. And that's why a person who is not pursuing virtue is incapable of virtuous friendships. You have to actually be pursuing virtue to be even open to virtuous friendships. It doesn't mean you have to be perfect, but it does mean that you're racing somewhere. And that means that it has to go from being incidental to being intentional, I
know you also give talks on the theology of the body, and tell us some of those themes, like especially prevalent in our culture today. I know the sexual issues and things. How do we talk to this culture? How do we convince this culture about Catholic teaching?
Yeah.
And tell us some of the themes you preach on.
Well, I think that one of the things it's like Christopher West talks about when he talks about theology of the body, is he says a lot of times Catholics think that the church's teaching on sex is just 2 letters, 1 word, no, right? Like 3 words, don't do it. That's the end of the church's teaching. And that's not even in the end, that's not the beginning. Yes, there's a boundary. But if we could start by saying, like, what is it that you're made for? What is it that your heart is drawn towards? What is it that you want to say yes to? Because those are the things that light a fire in our hearts. And so one of the things I'll try to do is highlight, what are the things that get your heart on fire? Like, what are the things that you recognize as beauty, you recognize as something that you want to be captivated by, you want to be captured by? So to highlight those things, people are like, yeah, that's right, that is what my heart wants. You can also then, in the same breath, talk about like what's the result of not pursuing relationships the way that it seems like the Lord is inviting us to. Let's just highlight some of those results. And then once someone trusts you and you can point out, like, here's the consequences of saying, let's do it our way, let's do it the world's way, then you have people saying, like, wait a second, that's true. Like, the result of saying no to the Lord is not more love, it's actually less love. It's not more wholeness, it's more brokenness. And so once people trust you, you can point out those even negatives, and it's like, oh my gosh, I never even thought of that. Because the world around me on the shows all say that, no, this is what makes everyone happy. It's the secret to happiness. What? Sex. Like, no.
Yeah. one of the theology of the body approaches too is like we're starting from what is.
Yeah.
Reality. In our culture today, we're even breaking that down. That it's like what is just simply what I think. It's not connected to a reality of my body and maybe the laws there around that and sexuality. I think sexuality has kind of gotten out of the box of marriage and just so destructive when it's not in the context of a loving committed, faithful, loving, committed relationship. Can you talk about that what is approach?
Well, yeah, even just to back up a little bit too, you're mentioning the loving relationship and this. Think about our culture that said, actually all you need is consent. Mm-hmm. Like, wow, that's the bare minimum if I've ever thought of one. But think about even with that bare minimum of all you need is consent. What's consent? That should be the most, it's 1 inch off the ground. Like, it's not a high bar at all. It is the lowest thing ever. Yeah. And we can't even figure out what consent is right now. That's why we have all these scandals, not the only reason obviously, but you have all these kind of accusations and things that are happening because I thought you were consenting, no I wasn't. Like, oh shoot, we don't even understand. As opposed to having the high bar, which is not only committed, a lifelong commitment of a man and woman united, oriented towards raising a family. And so basically think of the 4 marks of marriage. It's free. Yeah, that's consent, it's free. It's total, my whole self. It's faithful and it's fruitful, it's open to life. And you say, okay, that's now the new bar, that if we actually held to that, how many of the issues and the brokenness that we all experience, how quickly would that be resolved? How much more life would we have? How much more, think about even just the brokenness we have in so many young people, and now we're getting older, whose parents split up, and why? Because it wasn't free, or faithful, or total, or fruitful. It just becomes an issue. But I might have been a segue there, or whatever the word is.
That is great. The culture's struggling with that consent. Is consent still being given throughout this?
Yeah.
And marriage is the home of consent.
Yeah, seriously.
That's what makes the marriage.
Yeah.
Right? The exchange of vows.
And we didn't just consent right here in the middle, in the heat of the moment. Yeah. It was like, no, we set a date, and we worked towards that date. With saying, are we free? Are we here totally, faithfully, fruitfully? And then in front of everyone, we said we gave our consent. And now we have to live that out on a day-by-day basis. But this was very, very clear that we gave our consent to each other in front of everyone. But it's a high bar. But you think about the brokenness and the pain that people experience when that high bar is not even shot for. Well, then you're like, I think a high bar is worth it. I think it's worth holding to the high bar. Yeah.
Can you talk about the church's message, maybe, and how you see we need to deliver it to people on, same-sex attraction or transgenderism? Can you talk about some of that approach?
Yeah, I think I just wrote a book. It's coming out January 16th. It's called Made for Love, the Catholic Church and Same-Sex Attraction. It's published by Ignatius and Lighthouse Catholic Media and Augustine Institute. So they all combined and they're publishing this book. And I think one of I wrote it because my experience was there were so many people, young people that I would talk to, who they encountered Jesus, they had met him in the Eucharist, they knew the truth of the church, but then they came up against this teaching, either because they experienced it themselves or because they knew someone who experienced it. They were like, yeah, I'm out. I can't do it. And so I'm like, wait, no, I don't think this, I always have this sense of remember The Princess Bride? I don't think it means what you think it means. I don't think the church teaches what you think the church teaches. And so the idea was, okay, wait, what does the church teach? Why does the church teach this? How can you articulate this to the people you love? Or if you experience it, how can you live this out? How can you live out this call to love, but also call to chastity, regardless of your state in life? And so that's been I think that's the charge of the church right now, because there's so much misunderstanding.
Yeah, and it's you want to help the people themselves that are struggling with same-sex attraction, but also, like you said, it's hurting our witness to just evangelize.
Yeah.
You say, well, I can't join that because it's totally crazy what you people believe.
Right. And it's so interesting because because there's this assumption, actually, I will not name any names, but I have someone who's very close to me who works in the entertainment industry, and a coworker who himself identifies as same-sex attracted and is gay. He found out that she was Catholic because she went to Sunday Mass. They've been working together for months, and seeing each other every day. Very good relationship. When he found out she was Catholic, he was like, didn't talk to her for 3 weeks and was super rude to her. So finally she was like, dude, what's going on? And he's like, well, you hate me. She's like, what are you talking about? Like, well, you're Catholic. And she was able, I mean, she's like, when have I ever treated you in a way that would indicate that I look down on you or think differently of you? But his assumption was, because you're Catholic, you automatically hate me. Even though her actions to him were nothing but kindness and nothing but like just, no, I care about you like I care about anyone else. And so that's kind of the battle we're facing. And I don't want to claim that as a victim, like, so poor us. It's just like, no, that's the fight we're in. That means that we have to go beyond justice. We have to go to love. So justice would be like, oh, are you kidding me? That's ridiculous. But love says, yeah, I get it. You're hurt. How can I demonstrate to you that I don't see you the way you think I see you? I think that going beyond justice to love.
Right. And isn't one of the approaches of the theology of the body, what John Paul is talking about, we can look and see a spousal meaning of the body.
Yeah.
It's meant to give away itself in love, and the complementarity of the sexes, allows this giving and receiving. Is that some of the approach that you take?
Well, yeah. And so it's interesting because unless someone accepts the scripture as data, this is going to be kind of like you have to start way back, right? You have to start with just like, what do we know? But you can do that as a minor example, but I think it's pretty significant. Say, look at the complementarity of the sexes. Like, what do you mean? That's ridiculous. It's just like, wait, here's a man's body, here's a woman's body. Realize that in that man's body, every single biological system is intact and complete. In this woman's body, every single digestive system, limbic system, a circulatory system, like it's all completely intact. Neurological system, they're all completely, he doesn't need anything more, she doesn't need anything more, except for one system in his body and one system in her body that on its own is not complete. It's not it's not integral, and that's the reproductive system. And that man needs another body for his system, but not any other body, a female body. And hers needs another body, not just anybody, but a male body to be complete. And you realize sometimes people, their eyes are like, oh, I never thought of that the body actually does reveal something about what we're made for, what we're called to.
Yeah.
And that, in order for, in my experience, for someone to accept that, there has to be a level of, I trust you. Like I'm open, and at least open to like the argument. And if I lead with that, it's like, whatever. Because we have a culture also that says the body's incidental to who you are. It's like, oh, really? It's not who I really am. That's just the shell. And we realize, this is Gnosticism. This isn't a morality issue. This is actually a worldview, what's a human being issue.
And the part of human flourishing, a definite essential part, is living in that reality of who I am in my body, right? I want my innards to be, congruous with my body, as a male, and to accept that reality. And the Catechism has a little section about that, accepting who we are in our sexuality and things. That, and it seems like that message needs to get out there.
Totally. Well, and then it's like, how do we bridge that gap? Because there is so I remember I did it. It was a debate. It was a friendly debate, but it was with a man who was living in a relationship with another man. He taught theology at a local Catholic school that nearby where I lived, and we were talking about marriage, same-sex marriage. And he was for. I was for the traditional definition. And at one point in the conversation, he says, "Well, my biology doesn't." He says, "I'm not defined by my biology." And I was like, oh my gosh, I almost had this look like, eureka, because the moderator said, Father, you have something to say. I was like, yes, this reveals so much. His maintaining, I'm not defined by my biology, reveals that we're not just talking about marriage here. We're not just talking about morality here. We're talking about the difference between a worldview that says you are your body and a worldview that says you're something other, you're distinct from your body. And because the Catholic worldview is like, no, human beings are body and soul together. Like, I'm just as much my body as I am my soul. My body's not incidental to me. But his view, as a quote unquote, Catholic theologian, was like, no, the body doesn't mean anything. It's like, wow. So it was funny because afterwards, one of our students, engineering students, a very like, he said, how'd it go? And I said, well, one of the more fascinating moments was this man said, not defined by my biology. The engineer says, oh yeah, well, you tell him he should try not eating for 6 weeks, see if his biology defines him then. I was like, oh, good point.
Yeah. And I know it comes across in your approach too, the call that the church is to have in patience and love and mercy and talking with people. And you seem like the charitable thing is to help people come to that acceptance and to live in that reality of their body and the call to marriage and things. So just keep up the good work, and thanks so much for joining us.
I appreciate it.